So hello everyone and welcome back. I really enjoyed all your comments and all your positive feedback to my videos, and this led or motivated me to continue doing this series. And today we have this bad boy here. I decided if I started this channel in the way I did with the bikes I did, why not complete the trinity of Hypernaked bikes with the 2020 KTM Supderduke 1290. Really awesome bike. I've ridden it. This video here is going to be a bit more focused on this bike, but I'm also going to draw a conclusion and compare it to the Aprilia, my Aprilia Tuono, or Aprilia Tuonos in general, and the Ducati Streetfighter V4S, and try to give you a whole picture of it all, of how which bike would suit who, and with regards to which riding style, which bike would be preferable. Because in my opinion, there really is no bad bike. There is just bad choices of riders who choose bikes that don't fit their riding style. But nevertheless, let's focus on the topic. I mean, what can I say? Great bike, really awesome. Progress what KTM did here to give you some kind of a my history with this bike is in 2017 was when I tested the second generation Supderduke, which is the predecessor of this one, and my Aprilia Tuono. I had them back to back for 2 days. And before that, I was really drawn to the KTM. That was the bike where I felt I had it. Yeah, I can tell you, I had it on the poster on my wall. I wanted it so bad. I also, from my history, I started out with the Suzuki SV650, and it has a V2 engine and naked bike. And I always felt like this would be such a nice way to upgrade and go on from there. Nevertheless, in this time, what I really experienced when I rode it against my Tuono was that its stability was just lacking. So you had this phenomenon until you didn't put your knee down or anything. It was really nice. It was really easy to use and really good handling. But at the point where you put down your knee, or where you try to use the capabilities of the bike and really push it for what it's got, you could just feel the front end was so strange. It didn't give you much confidence, and that was really something which bothered me so much that I had no choice but to go with the Aprilia. And of course there are other aspects which really I like about the Aprilia, and which led to my decision that this is really the bike I wanted to have. Nevertheless, I was really a kind of bit disappointed when I had this KTM. But I think, or what the press also said, KTM listened to its reviews, and boy, they did their homework. Yeah, this bike, if I can tell you right off the bat, if I had this bike in 2017, I'm not so sure if I would have chosen the Aprilia. It's hard to imagine what would have happened. Nevertheless, what I want to say with that is KTM did its homework. With this bike, the front and the whole suspension of the whole chassis really works good together. What it was really lacking, they fixed it. They really did. And I think there were several aspects which led to this happening. From the one hand, maybe you can see it right here, you have the rear suspension, and below here you can see there's a rocker system. So what does it mean? Just to give you a quick technical overview, KTM for a long time, also coming from off-road sports, they have this tradition. You can see it on, this is an old Supderduke here. You can see right there the rear strut is directly mounted onto the rear swing arm, and this was really a philosophy they took from off-road sports. And what other manufacturers do with this system, this linkage system, you can see it also on my Aprilia and every other bike, or lots of other bikes. It just to give you a quick overview, it gives you a changing of the lever, or a lever progression when the rear suspension is working, which means that you can have a characteristic that in the beginning of the compression phase of the rear strut, it's gonna make for the movement of the rear wheel, it's gonna make just little movement on the strut, but once it reaches a point, or when it comes close to compression, the rear strut is then for a small way of the rear swing arm, it's gonna have to do lots of weight, or with this changing linkage, it's gonna make lots of weight into the suspension, which means that's where we talk about progression or progressive spring or suspension behavior. This is a phenomenon where it just hinders the rear wheel or the rear suspension to go on block, to compress completely. And KTM had this philosophy of not using this system and building into the rear suspension a progression which is built inside the rear strut. But I don't know if it's just this or not, I cannot tell you, but I don't imagine it would work so great as it does right now. And the other clue, which I think was a big factor in improving the stability, is you can see they changed the main frame on the motorcycles quite substantially. You have now a frame which is, you see this main bar here. So KTM has its, they call it their DNA of using steel structure frames, and the second, or the first Supderduke 1290 and also the second, had a much more triangulated frame and no member which would really connect the rear and the front of the chassis with one member. And you can just see this is such a massive piece of metal and steel. I really think, from the technical point of view, what this linkage system here, which they applied, and the rerouting of the chassis layout, is really what gave this bike its stability. And the changes are obvious in my technical opinion. That's the main reason for that, and it just works out. So yeah, to any KTM Supderduke owner, I can just recommend try this bike because it performs really well. You can also see a new exhaust system they put on. They rerouted the exhaust manifold. I mean, it's really just crazy seeing these arm-thick exhaust pipes coming out of the bike. It's amazing. Great engine. I felt with the second generation Supderduke, the engine was a little bit, maybe a bit more brutal, I would say. Back then I had the feeling that once you really kick in the power and really push it, it felt like, I mean, I don't know, it did not feel like a red thing, if that makes sense. It was like the sensation of something in your stomach felt like this is no good. And it's really funny to have a bike which accelerates so fast or so viciously that you come to a point where you feel like, okay, I'm not comfortable with that. And I would say this bike definitely, they took something out of this character. Not necessarily in a bad way. The power delivery band is smoother than the old Supderduke, I'd say. It's still vicious up there, but the jump is not as big, if that makes sense. So definitely a positive on that side. And yeah, massive power, great feeling, really a great engine. From the aspect of the bike for rideability, so you have to know for KTM, even though they are very much involved in street racing and they have big involvement in the motorcycle championship, MotoGP, this really is their APAC or more sportiest motorcycle they have. But nevertheless, this bike is not a racetrack bike in the classical sense as maybe my Tuono is, or the Tuono in general. I would say it's very road oriented. You have the feeling you sit very upright, very much on the front wheel. I mean, yeah, you can feel it comes from the Supermoto niche. It comes from this direction of making a Supermoto a road sports bike. It's you sit so much on the front. You really have the feeling you sit on the front tire, and the handling of it is really great. You can just turn it around and have fun with it. It's just it's really a nice bike, really accessible. Also from this regard, I would say accessibility on this bike, definitely they improved it. It's even more smooth on the quick shifter, up and down. Of course it's not as smooth as a four-cylinder as the Aprilia or as the Ducati especially. Nevertheless, for a V2, for such a great V-twin engine, it's just really nice. But I feel like the only thing from that regard is throttle response. I had it in race mode. I had, again, traction control turned off, wheelie control turned off. I feel like with this new emissions regulations, maybe there is just this when shifting the load on the gas, it comes to a point where you feel like it's not as smooth. It's maybe cutting off the power or the injection so drastically for emissions, whatever, that once you get back on the throttle, especially in high revs, it has a kick in it, like you ride and it hops. Yeah, that's the best I can emulate what I mean. I had the feeling maybe that my Aprilia had that little bit, and once I put on the Akrapovic race map, it was gone. And I think an ECU retune on this bike would definitely make that regard just better, not for power, not for any crazy, just to give you this smooth change of load, and that would really benefit this bike. Yeah, what else can I say? Electronic wise, I don't have the key anymore. I don't know if I can turn it on. No, I can't. The display of it's really nice. You can have a look at here. It's shut off now, but what I can tell you is it's really I think the best digital display there is on the market. It's so readable. You have such big numbers on the odometer. Really great. From the design of it, they changed especially the rear frame here. This is now not a steel structure anymore. From my opinion, I think I heard they made this one lighter. Nevertheless, just from the design of it, I liked the old steel structure a bit more. It just had more of this KTM DNA. Design-wise, otherwise, I mean, you can have a look yourself. They didn't change too much, not too drastic changes. They have the same lightning here in the front. I think they moved it a bit more to the top. Indicators up there. But the overall design just stays true to this second generation KTM design. Really nice feature what you can see, even though this bike does not have electronic suspension, it has a conventional VP suspension. Also maybe a characteristic of KTM, they are a manufacturer which have their own suspension manufacturer VP and WP, maybe English, called in English. It's some say also in racing, some say it's not as good as Öhlins, also in MotoGP. To be honest to you, on the street it felt good. I didn't feel too much difference there. I think suspension wise it plays in a similar category as the Tuono factory, or also the Panigale Streetfighter V4S. Yeah, it does not have the electronic suspension. You can feel it maybe a bit, that just the superiority and stability, it's lacking that. It's not, I mean, that's margins we're talking about. But yeah, as you can see, which is really nice, you have these levers here to change spring preload. Yeah, and I think also other the other setup can also be changed. Here you have the damping, and also here on the front forks you have these nice little hand levers here. From here you can see better, so you just don't have to take out your screwdriver and mess around with it. You can just change it there. Works really nice, nothing bad from my side to say about that. Yeah, this is basically my feedback on this bike. Now, maybe the most interesting part for most of you, which bike should you get? Well, it's really difficult to, again, like I said, this is not something you can split up in a way to say this bike is better than this bike and you should buy this and not that. What I would say, it's so much a question of preference. From riding on the road, I would say the KTM really is the one which is the most road focused, which is maybe also the most fun focused. So not necessarily pushing for the limit, not necessarily pushing out of the corner, but just have a bike which is really friendly, which, yeah, even more, I think even more accessible than the Ducati. I would go as far as saying that it's of course it's a V-twin engine. You have to get used to it. It's a bit rougher than the V4. Nevertheless, just from the characteristics of it, it's really nice. And if you have also a rather open knee angle here, upright position. You have here what I realized here, when you sit on the bike, in this area you have just a lot of space. So even if you're somebody who's got a bigger of a belly than me, you have space here, whereas on the other bikes, especially in the Aprilia, you would have it would get maybe uncomfortable. So also I would say what the KTM does really nice is the wheelie factor. And yeah, of course you don't do them on public roads, just on racetracks, and I've tested it now on the racetrack before. Yeah, I think from all the three of those bikes, the one which lets you wheelie the easiest. It doesn't come up too harsh. It just comes up nice. It's up, and you can just smoothly ride the wheelie. Also, learning wheelies, it's really easy with this one. So wheelie category goes to the KTM. So I think what I also said in the Ducati video, or my previous video, is I would categorize these three bikes in a scale of street oriented and sporty, or racetrack oriented. And on the street orientation you would have the KTM, then there would be the Ducati, and in the middle, really positioning itself, I think, between the Aprilia and the KTM. And the Aprilia is then just the bike which is the most racetrack oriented and has the most of this racetrack race bike DNA. again, something which I felt on the KTM as well as on the Ducati, as your knee angle is a bit more upright, as you sit a bit more upright, like I said before, it makes straight line or going straight more comfortable. But when you get sporty, when you start to work, you feel it in your legs a bit more again than on the Aprilia. So racetrack endurance is definitely, I would say, better on the Aprilia than on the KTM and the Ducati. Power wise, like I said, as the KTM does now not have this aggressive behavior anymore, I don't know, I subjectively, maybe also because now I've ridden the Tuono for over a year now and I've got used to the power, there's really not too much difference of them at all. I mean, all of them have tremendous power. They deliver it differently. Torque, the torquiest is definitely the KTM. Top end power, they seem similar. I mean, it basically comes, in my opinion, if you just regard the engine or just the power, I would say it comes down to what you prefer. Do you prefer the V-twin sound? Do you prefer bottom end torque, maybe 10% more? Or do you prefer top end speed? Which sound do you prefer? Do you prefer, when you're talking about 4 cylinders, do you prefer the screaming superbike sound of the Aprilia? Do you prefer the MotoGP sound of the V4S? It all comes down to you. I would say there is no bad choice when it comes to engine, when it comes to power delivery. They're so similar, there's so much playing in the same level when it comes to that. And again, as I said, even though the KTM is more the street oriented one, I can definitely see this bike also on the racetrack, having fun, having the supermoto seating position and putting out your shoulders and just feeling like a supermoto ride. This bike is so much fun, and like I said, KTM really did their homework. It's a great step forward and nothing bad to say about that. Also the sound wise, like I mentioned, this sounds really nice. It's not too aggressive, not too much in your face, as much as the Aprilia or the Ducati is. I would say sound wise the most quiet is, I think, the KTM, and then up there low ends it's the Ducati, and on the high revs Aprilia and Ducati are just loud and awesome. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything much to say about that now. Again, if you have questions, if you want to give me feedback, just feel free to do so, and comment below, ask questions if you have them, give me feedback if you want me to change something. I read all your comments. I'm really glad you write me, and I have so much fun doing these videos. And also check out Destimoto in Lichtensteig here in Switzerland. Awesome KTM dealership. They have got all the models. They also have Kawasaki. So big thanks to them for allowing me to test this bike, have a spin, and yeah, that's it. I hope you guys liked it. I tried to have this video a bit shorter than the one before. Maybe I did not succeed too much, but that was my conclusion on these bikes. See you guys. Thank you again for your support. I really appreciate it. This is V4 Maniac. Cheers out.